Vanessa Gold has announced that she's putting from 8 to 10% of the Gold family shares up for sale. So they're available for sale. She's announced that. I think she's hired Rothschilds to help facilitate and help negotiate the sale through. And there was a statement which went out today which said she has notified all of the current West Ham shareholders of the availability. Now, that's something obviously I would expect to happen anyway. I'm a little bit confused about part of it, which I'm sort of hopeful somebody that understands more about how buying and selling shares works might be able to explain to me. But as I understand it, the Gold family own 25% of West Ham United. I think Kretinsky owns 27%, something like that, and David Sullivan owns in the 30s. Might have it slightly wrong, 36, 37%. But you get the idea. To have full control of West Ham, you have to own 51%. So this is really crucial. If Vanessa Gold is selling even as much as 10%, it still gives nobody 51%. So they still have to run the club as a group. And David Sullivan has come out with, I say it's a statement, or whether it's a statement or whether he sort of leaked it to a few chosen people, that actually he has first refusal to buy some of the shares, not all of them. Even if he does, they're all very happy, apparently, with how things are at the moment. So you have to assume that Kretinsky is happy, that David Sullivan is happy, and of course that Trip Smith, who I think owns 5 to 10%, something like that, a small, very, very small holding, that he's happy as well. Everybody's happy. But it would be really, really weird if one of those three parties didn't take up the option of these shares. So I do wonder why they've appointed Rothschilds to facilitate the sale. Now, maybe that's just something you have to do. Maybe when you do that sort of stuff, that's just the protocol. That's just the standard procedure, what you have to do. I just would have thought that maybe, and this is probably me being very, very naive about how these things work, that maybe she approaches Kretinsky and Sullivan, which she's already done, and one of those puts their hands up and said, oh yeah, please, I'll have those. In which case I would just expect the sale to go through. Even if you have to appoint somebody to oversee it, like you appoint Rothschild, I don't know, maybe you have to announce this sort of stuff to the stock market. Maybe that's what you have to do. Maybe they already know who's going to take control of these shares. I'd be very surprised if they didn't. But I was looking at it from David Sullivan's point of view, and I thought, well, why would David Sullivan actually take these shares? Does he want to sort of gather enough shares that he can make like a hostile takeover, and then he can, I know he can't just with another 10%, but maybe he wants to buy other people's shares to gain full control of the club? Well, he sort of could have done that anyway. If that was really something that he wanted to do, I guess he never would have sold the shares to Daniel Kretinsky in the first place, if that was the be-all and end-all. I seem to remember the first time when he came into the club, I remember Gold and Sullivan's first ever press conference. It was in Upton Park, and I remember David Sullivan had the sort of the claret smoking jacket on, if you remember. And they both said, I remember in that first press conference, that they would be open to somebody else coming in and helping out. They're looking for somebody to help out. They've been pretty consistent on that. Not only have they said it, it's actually happened, isn't it? That's because Kretinsky's come in, Trip Smith's come in. I think even they allowed Terry Brown, the former West Ham chairman, to come in and buy a very, very small percentage. Very small percentage. So clearly they sort of practice what they preach in those sort of terms. But the more I look at it, the more I think David Sullivan has got no desire to sell his share of West Ham at all. I think he's in it for the long haul. I really, really do. Because I get the impression, I mentioned in yesterday's video about David Moyes, I said that I felt the messaging was slightly different from the club at the moment with regard to David Moyes' future, but I think more importantly with how the club were referring to Tim Steidten. I get the impression from like the leaks you get from the club that the influence of Tim Steidten is growing. And I think that it's something I think David Sullivan's quite pleased about, really. Just irrespective of who appointed him, who decided to appoint him. There's a million different stories. Well, there's not. There's about 3 different stories you can listen to. But whether you believe that it was Sullivan's idea, whether it was Kretinsky's idea to appoint Steidten, it doesn't matter. I do think that David Sullivan is quite comfortable with it, and it does appear that Steidten has put himself into a position where I think he's now got the ear of the owner. And I'm not sure he absolutely did at the start, and I think he likes it. I think Sullivan likes what's going on at the club. I think he likes the way that the club is developing, actually. So I just can't see a situation where he wants to get rid of that anytime soon. Again, I will hark back to a documentary I saw with David Sullivan some years ago, and I may, old Father Time makes things become a little bit hazy in your mind. Maybe you don't remember him exactly as they do, but I remember him walking around. He's got a really big house. He's not got a big house. It's not a 3-bedroom semi-detached. He's not got a 3-bedroom semi-detached. He's got a 4-bedroom semi-detached. He's not got a big house. He's got a mansion. And I remember him walking past the swimming pool, and I think the interviewer said something like, "How often do you go swimming?" Something like that. And Sullivan indicated that actually, I don't know, I never used the thing. I totally paraphrased it. Those weren't the precise words, but you get the general gist. I think the point is he might have an awful lot of wealth. I don't get the impression he's going around spending money all the time. He likes the deal. A lot of these people do that. It's the buzz of the deal, the buzz of the negotiation. Put plainly, David Sullivan, I think, really likes running a football club. He really does. So I just don't think that he's got enough money. What's he got? He's got a value. His worth is over £1 billion. He's got more money than he could ever spend. So I just don't think he's going anywhere. I think he wants to see the project through with this, with Tim Steidten. I remember him speaking about it years ago, when there was trouble. I think it was possibly might have been just after the Burnley protests. For some reason, I remember sitting on the boats, the boats outside the London Stadium. Might have been before a Watford game. I remember sitting on there and an interview popping up on people's phones, people showing me, and it was David Sullivan, and he was saying that he wanted to build a data-driven analytics department. He wanted scouts. He wanted recruitment people. He had this vision. He had this dream. Now, listen, it never happened. I think it was all a load of old rubbish at the time. But it did show that he knew the value of it. It at least demonstrated that he knew it was something that people wanted. And I'll go back to another conversation that that's not a conversation, but let's call it an off the record interview last season where it was suggested that maybe Graham Potter would be a viable option at West Ham. And as I understood it at the time, Sullivan wasn't overly interested because he felt that a lot of Graham Potter's work, who was at Chelsea at this point, a lot of the good stuff that Potter had done had been because the owner had implemented this data-driven, I'm talking about the owner of Brighton here, the Brighton Hove Albion chairman, had implemented this data-driven department that was overseeing all the football at Brighton. Basically, Sullivan thought that actually it wasn't because of Potter, it was because of all this other stuff. So I think if you put both of those examples together, I think it's something he's always coveted. I think Sullivan wants to modernise, and he wants to drive the club forward in that way. And if you put all those together, he quite likes it. He likes the deal. He enjoys being chairman. He enjoys going to the games. He doesn't need the money. Then I do wonder if it's not too much has been made of the Vanessa Gold shares. It's a big story. It is. It's West Ham. It's to do with West Ham ownership. I think that's it. I think if he'd have really wanted those shares, he just would have waited for them. I don't understand what the situation with the shares in probate is. I really don't understand the legalities or much about it. But I do understand what people are like, and I do think that Sullivan's going nowhere. I really don't. And I think Kretinsky's happy with his lot. Trip Smith, I'm not so sure. I think the one thing that would make me curious would be if Trip Smith bought these shares. Then I would probably think, hold on, what's going on here? What's going on here? Because that would be odd. But I'll just think nothing of it. If we hear within the next few days that a sale has been agreed with Vanessa Gold shares, and you hear that maybe even if it's 8%, you hear that 4% have gone to Sullivan and 4% have gone to Kretinsky, or even the whole 8% has gone to Kretinsky, I wouldn't read an awful lot more into it. I do think at the moment, both are really, really happy with their lot. And I just can't see David Sullivan going anywhere anytime soon.